everyone. Welcome to another episode of BioLogic Science News. Today's episode is about some really fascinating research being conducted by NASA. Some of the scientists involved include people like Dr. Deanna Gentry at the Ames Research Center and Mike Grace at San Jose State University. They're using various environmental inputs to simulate the conditions on the surface of Mars. They're simulating what life would experience if it was to be transplanted to Mars, and they're doing it one variable at a time. For instance, life on Mars would be exposed to much more UV radiation than life on Earth. Mars has a really thin atmosphere. It's almost 97% carbon dioxide, and it has less than 0.6% the pressure of Earth's atmosphere. Because Mars's magnetosphere disappeared billions of years ago, the surface of Mars is exposed to the cosmic rays and radiation from the sun. The atmosphere is exposed too, and these rays from the sun ionize the outer layers of atoms in the atmosphere, and it blasts them away. There's literally a trail of ionized particles blowing away from Mars in the direction of the solar wind. As Mars's atmosphere is stripped away, the surface itself gets boiled with ultraviolet radiation, and this poses the most significant threat to life on Mars. Because it poses the greatest threat, the NASA researchers started with this variable. They grew cultures of E. coli in petri dishes, and they exposed them to UVC radiation, a type of UV radiation that's particularly dangerous and mutagenic. Each culture was exposed to 7 rounds of radiation, followed by a break where they could regrow. Most of the E. coli were just killed by the radiation, but with every round, some of them survived. Some of them had some genetic quality that gave them a minor resistance to radiation, ultraviolet radiation, and they just happened to live on to the next generation. Each subsequent radiation exposure killed significantly fewer and fewer E. coli. Ultimately, 6 orders of magnitude fewer were killed at the end of the experiment than at the beginning, which is strong evidence that the E. coli cultures were evolving a resistance to UVC radiation. The simulated environment is created in a device that the researchers and their grad students designed themselves. It's an automated system that keeps tabs on the microbes growing within it, while allowing the researchers the ability to modulate variables like temperature, humidity, and of course exposure to radiation. The system, they argue, is the future of directed evolution. Their device makes it easy to control environmental variables, and thus create the selection pressures that push the microbe's evolution in one direction or another. In just this way, the researchers directed the evolution of the cultures of E. coli to become more resistant to radiation. Now the next step is to expose the cultures to other variables that are present on the surface of Mars, like temperature. At its warmest, like an equatorial summer day, the surface of Mars can be upwards of 70 degrees Fahrenheit. But at its coldest, Mars can be close to 200 degrees below zero. So that's a pretty big temperature range, and it's pretty heavily biased towards colder weather. This isn't a surprise, as Mars is further from the sun and gets less energy from it than Earth, and it has a thinner atmosphere, so it retains just a sliver of that energy as heat. This is a challenge for life, as extreme cold temperatures simply freeze and outright destroy biological tissue. By lowering the temperature in the simulation chamber, and maybe designing temperature cycles that mimic the seasons on Mars, the researchers will be able to get one step closer to a total recreation of the surface of Mars from the perspective of a little microbe. If they can direct the evolution of some of these microbes, like E. coli, to eventually survive on Mars, that will unlock a hugely powerful tool for terraforming. Just as microbes played a huge role in the formation of the Earth's atmosphere and biome, the researchers argue that microbes will be critical to terraforming Mars and making it fit for future human habitation.